In this case, we'll discuss the topic of the Arctic in regards to Canada-US relations. The key actors involved are Canada and the United States, as they are two of the 8 countries with territory north of the Arctic Circle. More specifically, CJOC, the Canadian Joint Operations Command, NORTHCOM, the U.S. Northern Command, and NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command.
Regarding the Arctic border, there is a long history. Since the 1970s, temperatures have increased significantly in the Arctic. In the past decade alone, there has been an increase of 0.75 degrees Celsius. These large temperature increases have resulted in a decline in sea ice, which is opening up the region to increased shipping, tourism, and resource extraction. All of these seem like positive commercial opportunities. They also present new unprecedented challenges, such as environmental degradation and geopolitical competition. Efforts to address Arctic concerns, issues have remained very controversial. Canada's argument is that Canada and the United States have had a long-standing disagreement regarding an important sea routes, known as the Northwest Passage. Canada argues that the channels that pass through Canada's 36,000 island Arctic archipelago are internal waters, and therefore should be under Canadian control. The United States, as well as the European Union and other nations, continue to state that the Northwest Passage is not subject to Canadian control. This is because it is an international shipping strait through which foreign vessels have a right to travel through. But with recent increase in Russian and Chinese activity in the Arctic, some analysts even argue that it would be in the United States' best interest to recognize Canada's sovereignty claim in order to help exercise control over the area. On the other side, some analysts fear that doing so would create a precedent that could affect the U.S.'s navigation through other important waterways, like the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf.
Another issue regarding Canada and the United States is oil and gas development in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. Under President Trump, the U.S. Congress signed an oil and gas program in the refuge as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. However, the House passed a bill that would have repealed the program. After the recent election, President Biden was opposed to the development in the refuge and placed a temporary moratorium on all federal government activities relating to any oil and gas programs. The Canadian government, the territorial governments of the Yukon and Northwest Territories, and many Indigenous peoples are also opposed to the U.S. program. They all argue that development in the refuge could negatively affect wildlife, as well as culture and subsistence of Indigenous peoples who rely on it. Regarding negative impacts to wildlife in the refuge, the porcupine caribou herd plays an important role. Under a 1987 bilateral agreement between the U.S. and Canada, both nations agreed to a commitment to conserve the herd and its habitat and to consult with each other regarding any activities that could have a significant long-term adverse impact on the herd.
That in 2012, Canada and the United States signed a Tri-Command framework for Arctic cooperation, which was intended to improve safety, security, and defense coordination among the 3 commands with Arctic responsibilities, such as CJOC, NORTHCOM, and NORAD. Canada and the United States have also coordinated on economic development and environmental conservation in the area. In 2016, both nations pledged to establish low-impact shipping corridors, manage fisheries sustainability, and reduce offshore oil and gas leasing. Under the Trump administration, the U.S. sought to reopen portions of the Arctic Ocean to oil and gas development, but continued to engage with Canada on important issues like joint contingency plans for oil spills. Canada and the U.S. are also founding members of the Arctic Council, which includes 8 Arctic states, 6 organizations representing Indigenous peoples, and observers to promote cooperation.
In this council, the groups have been able to negotiate important binding instruments like the 2017 Agreement on Enhancing International Arctic Scientific Cooperation. The Arctic has been and will continue to be important for both Canada and the United States. As temperatures continue to rise, an ice-free Arctic creates many challenges for Arctic nations trying to gain control over potential lucrative shipping routes and natural resources. The tension from the issue of navigational rights through the Northwest Passage will likely remain the same between the 2 nations. In the past, the strait's thick ice meant passage was only possible by submarines or icebreakers. However, as ice continues continues to melt, this passage has emerged as a viable shipping route that will likely increase tensions between the nations even more in the near future, unless this dispute is resolved.